And they are actually underwater right now. And this is what we've all been waiting for. This is what we've all been working toward these past few weeks, is getting you all underwater with the state parks and the Monterey Bay Aquarium divers right here in Point Lobos State Marine Reserve. Are you ready? I think we're ready.
Woo, I see them.
Oh, yes. And there they are. Hello, divers.
Right.
Hi, everybody. Happy World Ocean Day.
Happy World Ocean Day
from a surgy Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. Of course the surge comes up right when we're live right now. A little bit of an underwater rodeo here. Really excited to share World Ocean Day from underwater here in the kelp forest. So excited. My name is Patrick. I work for the Monterey Bay Aquarium social media team. Very happy to be here out in a wild kelp forest, not just in our kelp forest that we have at the aquarium. And I'm joined today by Angie. Angie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie, and I'm an interpreter for California State Parks. If you saw us this morning, thank you so much for tuning in this whole time. I know our fellow interpreters throughout the state had so much important and inspiring information to share with you all. I normally work up in the North Coast Redwoods District, so shout out to all of my friends and colleagues up in Northern California. Today we're on the Central Coast, as you all know, here at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve, and importantly, State Marine Reserve, which is a marine protected area. And a State Marine Reserve is a place where humans leave everything where it is, right? So our fish, we leave here. There's no fishing allowed here, no collecting allowed here. We leave the habitat alone. And so as you can imagine, those rules make this place an incredible place to go on a scuba dive, to see some of this amazing wildlife and explore this three-dimensional kelp habitat down here on the bottom of the ocean. So that's what we're going to have all of you join us to do today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, so excited, everybody. And we'll be going back and forth between selfie mode here with Angie, and I'll be doing some of the camera work. So if you have any questions, send those over to Erica topside. Hello to everybody who's tuning in on the aquarium social media feeds there as well. Our mission at the aquarium is to inspire conservation of the ocean, and I can't think of anything better for World Ocean Day than to be underwater in that kelp forest there to show you what is going on right off the back deck of the aquarium and all along the central coast of California. Monterey Bay Aquarium opened in 1984, so after Point Lobos State Marine Reserve was already established there. And what we have at the aquarium is pretty much a visitor experience, a visiting hall to what we have right off of the back deck. And I'm so excited to be here in this giant kelp forest. We got Angie there in the background with that giant kelp growing, and all around us, I hope you can see as I pan away just a little bit just how beautiful and lush the kelp forest environment is. We've got this beautiful pink coralline algae, as it's known, very hardy alga. Lots of different animals and critters hiding out in there. We've already found a few. Angie will point some out. And behind us, we've got not only some giant kelp, we've got other types of kelp competing for resources getting up there to the surface. I don't think I can quite see Daniel over there on the kayak far away, but visibility's improved a little bit with the rising tide from earlier this morning. So quite the amazing assortment of cold water critters here at Point Lobos. And Angie, where do we want to start? What do we want to show to the folks? We've got quite a few things going.
I think the best place to start is probably the giant kelp, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
So I know you guys probably all saw our giant kelp from the surface in the kayak with Daniel, but now we get to take an up-close look, actually underwater. And you can see that this is just one kind of group of kelp. All of these little stick almost looking things are called stipes. So I like to compare kelp to plants that we have on land. So this would be kind of like the trunk or the stick of a tree, maybe, a branch. And on the bottom here, maybe you can't see it so well in this one, but let's move over to this one right behind me. Where is it? Oh, here it is. This is a perfect example right here of the kelp holdfast. Now, like you all know, I work up in the redwoods, so I like to compare these kelp species to our redwood trees. This holdfast is like the root of the kelp. So imagine if you could see the roots of a tree, that intricate system in the soil. that's anchoring our plants and our trees into the earth. But instead, our kelp is holding on to these hard, rocky substrate or the hard, rocky ground, right? And that's what you can tell from the surface, because you can see so much kelp on the surface, is that a lot of Point Lobos has what we call rocky reef environment. It's one of the 6 key habitats in California's ocean. And normally, so in the future, when you look out at the coast of California and you see lots of kelp on the surface, that means that you're likely in a rocky reef habitat. There's lots of places for these holdfasts to fasten themselves to the ground. And then one of my favorite things on the kelp is this thing right here, which I think looks a whole lot like the Monterey Bay Aquarium's logo, right? So this is new growth. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Pat?
Sure, yeah. So what Angie is showing off right there is the growing blade of giant kelp. This is the tippy top of the kelp that reaches up to the surface, ends up spreading itself out over the sea surface in a canopy. So giant kelp in our area grows from about 70 feet deep, give or take, but then it can be over 150 feet long, growing up to the surface and splaying itself out. So what Angie was just holding up right there is one of the stipes that's starting to join the rest of the bundle there. And if I can find a logo on myself, I think I'm going right down here. So if you look at our Monterey Bay Aquarium logo, maybe on my arm is better, but that little blue friend right there, that is the growing blade of giant kelp. And it's one of my most favorite subjects to take photos of. To me, a growing blade of giant kelp like this, it's called a scimitar blade, and you can see all the little floats here, those nematocysts that are filled with gases to buoy the kelp up to the sunlight. They all grow off from one blade there to start, and it's an example of some of the amazing art in nature out there. And to me, this is just visual umami. It's just so satisfying to look at that giant kelp. So kelp is definitely my muse and one of my favorite parts about diving here along the California coast.
Hey all, it's Erica up on the surface, and we've got lots of awesome questions coming in from our students. Everyone's tuning in, and we've got a couple questions about kelp. So number one, the students want to know, how tall can kelp grow?
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. It depends on where you are looking at the giant kelp. Some of the prime conditions for giant kelp to grow are from here and in Southern California, and it can grow to be over 200 feet is what I've heard for the record. Over 100 feet is very common, and like I was mentioning, out here in the Monterey Bay, this giant kelp can start growing from about 70 feet deep and go all the way to the surface and then splay itself out. It doesn't grow quite as deep as in other places because of the visibility. And Angie, we're just very excited to be able to see each other even during this broadcast, because not only do we have this giant kelp in terms of productivity, we also have all this phytoplankton that is all around us right now. Can kind of see through it, but that is another part of the amazing productivity of the area.
Yeah, and that actually leads to another question. A lot of folks are wondering, how cold is it there? Now, I know that kelp forests like to grow in cold water, so something tells me you're not experiencing tropical water down there, are you? What's the temperature?
Great question and great hypothesis. So you can probably see that Pat and I, our skin is almost completely covered, extra layer. But underwater, that is pretty chilly. So our heads are totally covered, our hands are totally covered. And you're probably going to see us maybe start to shiver a little bit later on in the program, because we are definitely in a cold environment right now.
That's right. And one of the things about this cold water that we have is the seasons in the ocean are really driving a lot of what we're seeing right now. So a few months ago, if you folks were out here along the coast, you may have been blown away by just how windy it was. Not only the views, but the physical wind. And those winds that blow along the coast of California here, they push the warmer surface water away, and they draw up cold, nutrient-rich water from deeper down in the ocean. And when that cold, nutrient-rich water hits the surface, it just goes into overdrive because the sun is there starting to boost all that plankton. So a few months ago out here it was about 48 degrees, and it's a really good kelp year this year. There's a lot of activity, that cold water really nourishing this kelp forest. So you can imagine if the food for the forest was just brought in on the wind, similar with what's going on out here in the kelp forest, and the cold water is really chock full of life. And that's why diving out here, usually you don't see too well. You know, we're kind of wondering if we'd even be able to see each other a few feet away here on this dive. That's why the visibility in this area can get pretty impacted. There's just so much life that you're looking through. So if you ever are diving in the Monterey Bay, you can't see too far. Just, you know, put your face in the bowl of Cheerios and see how far you can look as well. It's the same thing, looking through all of that food for big animals, small animals, everything we have out here.
Nice, Patrick.
It's pretty awesome to be learning so much about the kelp forest. A lot of the questions we had coming in earlier and currently are just asking about the types of animals that we see in the kelp forest. So maybe we could have a look at a few of the things you're seeing down there.
Yes, I knew it was coming, and I've been patiently waiting to be able to show you some of the really awesome animals we have here protected in this marine protected area and California State Park. So the first one I have is one of my favorite animals to see here. It's called a Hopkins rose nudibranch. And there you have it. It's a really bright pink. You can see those kind of like spikes coming off of their body with almost like white tips there. And I know Pat has some really cool information about why this animal is so bright pink.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. It's always good when you're on a dive to stop and smell the Hopkins roses. You know, it's a good philosophy of life. But what we have right here is a nudibranch. You folks may be familiar with them. They are naked gill sea slugs. And so buried amongst all those little projections there are little gills and also little noses that you may know as rhinophores. We've posted about those on the aquarium social media before. And this little Hopkins rose here is a beautiful pink nudibranch because it eats a pink food. It's called a bryozoan, and you might see some of those patches right there next to it, some of the pink stuff around there. And the pink that it's eating, or it ends up putting it inside of its body. So that pigment is called Hopkinsaxanthin, and that's why it's bright pink. And it tells the other animals around it that I'm not very tasteful. You know, tasteful nudibranchs is what we're all about here, and that is not a very tasty one there for other critters that are around. Now, Hopkins roses used to be an example of an animal that showed up here only when it was warmer, only when we had an El Nino year or maybe a very warm spell, but now they're kind of here to stay. As the ocean has been warming up, you'll find Hopkins roses all around the shallow rocky reefs of the Monterey Bay area. So a little bit of a beautiful pink canary in our climate change coal mine right there to get to see it. Absolutely beautiful, but with an interesting story to tell about what's going on in the ocean.
Absolutely. Great link to some of our climate change messaging from today. Thanks to all of our ports interpreters that kind of shared some really, really vital information for all of us to understand about how we all share this ocean and we all share this climate, and they are intricately connected. You can't separate the two. So thanks for that. And Pat, I see a really cool thing just below your camera.
Oh, you
it's
mean
almost impossible
right
to miss.
next to me? There's something next to me? You mean right down here? We have just an awesome look right now at a giant spine sea star. We saw this one earlier or yesterday when we were doing some testing on all this underwater equipment here, and this giant spine star is really moving around, and these are just truly the wolves of the kelp forest with slow motion going after so many different animals, from brittle stars to snails and the like. And you may have heard of sea star wasting disease out there. Not every animal was impacted quite as strong, not every species rather was impacted quite as hard. So giant spine stars, ochre stars are doing okay here in the Monterey Bay area. And these ones right here, just absolutely beautiful with the blue little projections around the spines. The little dark clumps in the middle there are its gills that are sticking out of its inner skeleton there, and then that little white spot in the middle is where the water goes in. This little spot right here is called the madreporite. That's where the water goes into the sea star to power all of its tube feet that it uses to crawl around. So really good to see this big jewel star that's hanging out right here next to us on the prowl.
It's so beautiful. I love the colors. We have sort of like a baby blue, and then we have a purple and a dark green. So amazing.
Yeah.
And there's also another one of my favorite animals, and I don't know if there's any students out there who have attended my ports program in the North Coast Redwoods District, but I talk about these animals in my program, so maybe if some of those students are tuning in, they can drop some of the knowledge that they learned about them. But it is that sea cucumber right over there, so let's go swim over and take a look.
Let's take a look. Yeah, so this over here is a warty sea cucumber. And sea cucumbers are echinoderms, which means spiny skin, and you can really tell with the giant spine star over here, or a sea urchin. These ones are a little bit more squishy, but they are cleaning up on the bottom of the ocean. They've got their mouth arms on the front that are going around picking up little bits of food out of the muck, swallowing that. And then, Angie, I don't know if your students are aware of this little fact, but out the rear end of the sea cucumber is obviously where the food waste goes, but also sea cucumbers, they have a mouth and they have a butt and they don't breathe through their mouth. So that's also where the breathing is happening there, is on the tail end of the sea cucumber.
So fascinating. They do so many wacky things, these sea cucumbers. And it's so cool that they live in multiple habitats, right? So they're here in the kelp forest, in the rocky reef. And you can also find species of sea cucumbers even in the deeper canyons, ocean canyons off the coast of California, which is so cool.
Yeah, gotta love those sea cucumbers, although they're hanging out in brine all the time. So is this a sea pickle? No, not quite yet. It heard us talking about it. Well, we can move on as well.
Now, I know that some of our students probably noticed a really beautiful shell that was at the kind of tail end of our sea cucumber over there. And I have one right behind here.
Yeah.
That I'll pull up and show you. And maybe if some of the students on here have attended Daniel's ports program, or maybe Nikki's ports program in Mendocino, you would know what this shell is called. Maybe somebody can type it in the chat if you know it. But this right here is a red abalone shell.
Mamma mia. Sorry, that was just a pun for the ABBA part of abalone.
And I've even got 2 or 3 back here. Oh my goodness, I'm halfway to a 6-pack of abs. Keep doing some crunches.
Yeah, we've got quite an active, I mean, if I pan down right here, there's another abalone shell. There's another abalone shell right there. There's another one by the sea cucumber, like you were mentioning there, Angie. This is a very active foraging ground, not only for sea otters that we talked about. They love to eat abalone. I would guarantee a lot of these abalone shells are from sea otters, but also big fish like cabezons are out here. We saw one yesterday, and they will swallow an abalone whole and then spit out the shell. So Angie's found quite a few of those shells all around. That's evidence of predation, evidence of the prey interacting with the predator, like we're all talking about. In theory, you know, sea otters, kelp forest, they do that. Well, we got to see some sea otter dinner plates right there.
And another important player in that same story, I have a shell from them as well. Right here, it's actually a little bit broken, but you might be able to tell what this is just by kind of looking at the shape, some of the patterns on it. This is the test of a purple sea urchin. And they are voracious eaters of kelp, right? And so up where I live in the North Coast, these are very, very common. We're having an imbalance in our marine ecosystem where urchins are eating up all of this kelp and not leaving much behind for animals like the red abalone.
That's right. Yeah. So you see that. And by the way, if you guessed correctly, that means that you passed the test. And out of here, do you want to pass me the test? Yeah, take a look at that.
Oh, yeah, you've been
nice. I passed too. Yeah, so these urchin tests here, that's the internal skeleton of that urchin, like Angie was mentioning, these little balls on the top, the little ball sockets there to move the spines around. But this kelp forest that we have here behind us, it's always in flux, it's always in balance. You need all the different players in the game to be able to have the full competition realized in here. And so we're back. Did you lose us for a second?
We're all good, Pat. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. No, I just wanted to make sure. I was about to go full interpretation mode. This is super important. Make sure you're paying attention at home. But no, just the idea that we have out here in our local kelp forest, so many different players, so many different parts of that ecosystem that need to be there to be able to work together. And there's been an imbalance along our coast for a very long time, with the sea otters being hunted to near extinction back in the day, to all this that's going on with climate change affecting the ranges of animals, and really choosing some over the others. And we know that having a kelp forest with all the otters in it, all of its players, is really going to be the best thing for people, as well as the ocean out there. And so that's really something here at the aquarium that we love to talk about. You know, our mission is to inspire conservation of the ocean. We do a lot of work with those sea otters, rescuing them, rehabilitating them, releasing them back out into the wild. And state parks and everybody else out there protecting our shared resources. It's there so that we can have more of this in the future. So we're very fortunate that our local kelp forests have our little kelp weasels that are doing their thing. And so we have a lot of kelp resilient in this area, hopefully can repopulate other zones. But all these stories that you're sharing there, Angie, it really just shows what can happen if things get slightly out of whack. Then you can lose something just like this in a very short amount of time.
Hey guys.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of a sea otter being rehabilitated and released, and maybe getting to spend its time in an abundant, biodiverse marine protected area that's right next to a California state park. Right? So we have 280 California state park units along all of California, and many of them are located along the coast next to these MPAs. And so California State Parks wants to help everybody to be healthy by offering great recreational opportunities to go hiking, to go camping, to go picnicking, to go scuba diving in the most amazing places in California. We want to inspire you to be good stewards of this beautiful planet and ocean that we all share. And we want to educate you about all the amazing things that our parks have to offer. So we hope that I think this is the perfect example of California State Parks' mission, right? To be in a place, be healthy together, enjoy these amazing places, and to be inspired. I know I feel inspired today.
Well, you guys are doing a great job at inspiring all of our viewers. We have so many different classrooms that are tuning in, lots of students asking so many fantastic questions. A lot of kids who want to grow up to be scuba divers because of you two, which is awesome. But really quick, one of the top questions we're seeing are questions about what type of fish live in the kelp forest, and also a couple questions about sharks. You both were talking about how important the sea otters are as a keystone species to keep the kelp forest balanced, but maybe we can talk about some of the other predators that help keep our ocean ecosystem in balance.
Sure thing. Yeah, so Angie, just over your shoulder, it's a little bit hard with the visibility. We do have a few fish that are hanging out over there. There are a lot more fish, obviously, at Point Lobos, but we have been hanging out in the same spot for a little while, so our bubbly personalities may be making some of the locals a little bit intimidated. But we do have a blue rockfish that's swimming there in the background. We've had quite a few surf perch that have come to hang out with us during the stream. None quite there at the moment, so there's our blue rockfish looking good. So quite a few different types of fish around. Oh, here's one that we saw earlier. So we've got the schooling fish over there, but Angie, right here, we've got our crevice kelpfish that's decided to come back.
Oh, very cool. Yes.
And say hello. You folks might not even be able to see it. Yeah, Angie's pointing it out.
Very well camouflaged in this articulated coralline algae.
That's the fish. Okay, you can maybe see it moving. There's a fish that I'm pointing at. So very well camouflaged. Angie yesterday found a cabezon hanging out here. You might also find lingcod and some grass rockfish hanging out in here. So those are some of the fish. But Angie, we were talking about some of the sharks earlier. No sharks are probably going to come around and take a look at us on this dive, though.
Yeah, I will say that that's one of the most common questions that I get as a scuba diver is, what about sharks? And yes, absolutely. If you're going to be enjoying the ocean, recreating in the ocean, you have to realize that you're stepping into their home, to their habitat. And I know that some of our other presenters today talked about how we can respect wildlife. And so a part of being a scuba diver for all of the students out there that want to do what we're doing right now in the future is you have to realize that this ocean that we're exploring is not ours. We share it with so many animals, and be respectful and conscious of their lives, right? So some of the sharks that we can see in the kelp forest are the leopard shark. I know Pat said he's seen some leopard sharks here before. I've seen lots of leopard sharks in my scuba diving days as well. And we haven't seen any today, but maybe we'll be lucky and get to see one swimming by.
Yeah, so just as Angie was saying, actually just behind the camera over there, I saw my first leopard shark in the wild in the sands over by the beach at Whalers Cove on a dive over here a few years back. So leopard sharks are common around here. You might also find every so often some egg cases that belong to a shark. Those are also known as mermaids' purses. Commonly, those belong to swell sharks that we have. They're not just an okay shark. They're called swell sharks because when they get scared, they'll swallow water and swell up to wedge themselves in the crack they're sleeping in. We have some of those at the aquarium if you're visiting. You can see some of those swell sharks and those egg cases. And every so often, you might see a taupe shark, also known as a soup fin shark. It's a little bit more Southern California. You'll see that in the kelp canopy around here. And then we've got a few flood sharks. So you'll find at Point Lobos, bat rays, shovel-nosed guitarfish, thornback rays. Oh, and of course, angel sharks. You'll also find those in the sand here at Whalers Cove. So lots of sharks, but just bring a camera. Always a fun time to take a look at them. Nothing too much to worry about out here in the kelp forest. Especially sharks are very discerning. The white sharks that we have around here, they're looking for a big seal meal and not too interested in something that has a whole lot of metal and is bubbling at them in the belly. You can imagine that's a little bit of too much seltzer, I would imagine.
Yeah, we do know that we have to be careful and safe when we're in the water, but generally when we're seeing sharks in the water, we know that that indicates a healthy ecosystem, right? So
Absolutely.
Sharks are a good thing, not a bad thing. We love our sharks when it comes to...
The more sharks, the better. Bring them on.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
perfect.
All right. Well, divers, Angie from California State Parks and Pat from Monterey Bay Aquarium, thank you so much for tuning in with us. It's been really good to see you underwater. And thank you for exploring the kelp forest with us today. It's been so awesome. Do you guys have any final words you'd like to say as we end our program?
Well,
Oh, go for it.
no, please, after you. No, I insist.
All right, everybody. Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful for you all being here, for taking the time to learn about our oceans and how we can be better protectors of our oceans and help support this amazingly biodiverse ecosystem that is here for us to explore, right? Whether you're kayaking, bird watching, hiking along these bluffs, or any of the, coastline in California, we're so grateful to have protected places, both in California state parks and marine protected areas, and of course have amazing partners like the Monterey Bay Aquarium who make these environments accessible to so many people. So just thank you for being here. Happy World Ocean Day.
Thank you so much, Angie. Yes, happy World Ocean Day to all of you folks out there. I wanted to give a huge thank you to the California State Parks crew that's put all of this together, the communications ropes, the audio equipment, video equipment. There's a whole crew around us right now making sure that everything looks good and sounds good. So thank you to everybody that's doing that. And the mission of the aquarium, again, is to inspire conservation of the ocean. And we know that scuba diving is not for everybody necessarily, and it's also not for all the time. The ocean can get pretty angry out here, and so when you come to the aquarium, it's a window into the world out there. So I want to encourage anybody who's interested in scuba diving to get out there and get underwater. And if you're thinking, the cold is a little bit too much, come on down to the aquarium. You can go and take a look at some of the amazing things that we share our planet with here. Just happy World Ocean Day. Come visit the aquarium, visit your California State Parks, and thank you so much for spending some time in a kelp forest with us today.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Angie and Pat. It's just been such a pleasure. And thank you all for tuning in. We had some amazing questions coming in from all the students, so many different schools. There were so many different states that tuned in.
It's amazing. It was amazing
Yeah.
how many people tuned in from all over the United States and from other countries as well. So this has just been fantastic.
It looks like we've got a couple of other presenters